Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Always good to be back.
So, looks like we've got another development in the war in Ukraine, huh?
It does seem like things never slow down.
Well, this time it's all this talk about a possible meeting between, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Oh, yeah, that's been all over the headlines.
I'm sure you've seen it too. Honestly, it's pretty fascinating. I mean, could this actually lead to some kind of peace? We've got reports here from all over Poland, Serbia, even some sources in Russia. And, well, we're going to try and make sense of it all, see what's really happening behind the scenes.
That's what we do here on Deep Dive.
That's right. So let's start with what we know for sure, right? We know Michael Waltz, Trump's national security advisor, confirmed that Trump is planning to actually call Putin.
Yeah, he said Trump's going to call him to try and get those discussions started about ending the war.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty big move if you think about it.
I know. It's kind of crazy.
Trump's foreign policy has always been, well, let's just say a little unpredictable.
Right.
So this whole thing with Putin, it could be a sign that he's ready to take that same approach here, cutting out all the middlemen and just going straight to the top.
I mean, remember those summits he had with Kim Jong-un?
Exactly.
So maybe this is him doing that again, but with Putin this time?
Could be.
And it's interesting because Waltz has also been talking a lot about the need for dialogue with the Kremlin.
He has.
He's even said that getting all of Ukraine's territory back might not be realistic.
Yeah, that's important. Waltz is advocating for a more, I guess you could say, pragmatic approach.
Yeah.
Like he's acknowledging how complicated things are on the ground and maybe even hinting that some kind of compromise might be needed.
Okay, so Trump might be reaching out to Putin, but where would this meeting even happen? Okay, so get this. Switzerland has offered to host. Switzerland. Famous for neutrality and, well, chocolate.
I'll admit, picturing those two hammering out a peace deal over fondue is, well, a little strange.
Yeah, I know, right?
But, Switzerland actually has a pretty long history with this kind of thing, hosting peace talks and stuff. It goes back centuries.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They've often been this kind of neutral ground for countries that are, fighting.
I guess that makes sense. But is Switzerland really the right place for something like this?
Yeah.
It seems like everyone has an opinion on this war.
It's definitely a very charged situation.
Exactly. And to make things even more interesting, Serbia has also said they want to host the meeting.
No kidding.
Their president, what's his name? Alexander Vucic.
Yeah.
Vucic. He even said they'd guarantee the security of both presidents if they choose Serbia.
Wow.
That's a bold move.
It is. What do you think Vucic's hoping to gain by doing this?
Right. Why is Serbia suddenly so eager to get involved?
Well, Vucic said a few things. First, Serbia is not part of NATO or any other military alliance. Right?
Oh, so they're not tied to any other countries.
Right. So that means they don't have the same obligations as many other European countries, so they've got more freedom to do what they want.
So less pressure from allies to, avoid hosting the meeting.
Exactly.
Got it. What else did he say?
Well, he also mentioned that Trump was really popular in Serbia and that Putin is still pretty popular there, too.
Ah, I see. So he's basically positioning Serbia as some kind of bridge between Russia and the West.
That's how it seems.
Clever. But wouldn't hosting a meeting like this also be kind of risky for Serbia? I mean, doesn't it come with downsides?
For sure. They could end up alienating some of their Western allies, the ones who've been, imposing sanctions on Russia.
Right.
And, Serbia does a lot of trade with the European Union. So if they get too close to Russia, well, that could really hurt them economically.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a gamble for sure. Big rewards, maybe, but also some serious risks.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the who and the where of this potential meeting. But what about the what? What are they actually going to talk about?
Well, Waltz gave us some hints.
Oh, like what?
He seems to think that any path to peace has to involve talking directly to the Kremlin.
Direct communication.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, he's also suggested that getting back all of Ukraine's territory might not be possible.
So he's saying that Ukraine might have to give something up to make a deal.
That's how I see it.
But wouldn't that be controversial? I mean, wouldn't Ukraine be against that?
Well, yeah. Ukraine's government has always said they want to get back all their territory, even Crimea, which, Russia took back in 2014.
That does create some tension, doesn't it?
For sure.
Ukraine fighting for every inch of land, while Trump's advisor is saying they might have to compromise.
Exactly. And that brings up a lot of questions.
Like why?
Well, what would those compromises even look like? What would they have to give up?
And would they be happy with that?
Right. Would there be a lot of pressure on them to accept a deal they don't like?
And then there's this other thing too, right? Waltz has also talked about a ceasefire as a first step towards peace talks.
A ceasefire.
But even that's complicated.
It is, yeah.
Whose interest would it actually serve? Would it really be fair to both sides? And how do you even enforce a ceasefire in a situation like this, where nobody really trusts each other?
All good questions.
Not to mention the timeline Trump has talked about.
Oh, yeah.
He wants this war to be over within 6 months of taking office.
That's incredibly ambitious.
His special envoy is supposedly aiming for a solution within 100 days.
Wow.
100 days to resolve a conflict that's been going on for years. I don't know about that.
It does seem a little optimistic.
Right. It's almost unrealistic.
Yeah, bordering on unrealistic, I'd say. I mean, think about what this war has done to the energy markets, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's been thrown into chaos. And if they do manage to reach some kind of lasting peace deal, well, they're going to have to address that.
Right. They'll have to figure out how to bring back some stability.
Exactly.
It's true, though. The economic fallout from this war has been huge.
It has been.
I mean, we're all feeling it in some way, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of all that, there's the human cost. We can't forget about that in the middle of all this talk about diplomacy and strategy and all that.
Absolutely. Millions of Ukrainians have been displaced from their homes. Families have been torn apart, countless lives lost. Any path to peace, it has to prioritize the needs of those who've been directly affected by the fighting.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the geopolitical stuff.
It is.
But at the end of the day, this is about real people, their lives, their homes, their futures. Everything's been turned upside down.
You're right.
And that brings up some really tough questions.
It does.
Ethical questions.
What are you thinking?
Well, what level of compromise is actually acceptable when you're trying to achieve peace?
Right.
At what point does being pragmatic start to compromise justice for the people who've suffered?
Yeah, those are tough questions.
I don't think anyone has easy answers to that kind of stuff.
I agree.
But we can't ignore them, right? It feels like everyone's so focused on this potential Trump-Putin meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned other players too, right? What about China?
Oh, yeah, China.
I mean, they're pretty close with Russia, so their stance matters a lot, doesn't it?
China's kind of a wild card in all this.
Really?
Well, they have their own relationship with Russia, but they've also got strong economic ties to the West. It's complicated.
I bet.
How they choose to play this, it could have a huge impact on any peace process.
So what do you think they'll do?
It's hard to say. It almost feels like they're just watching everything happen right now, kind of waiting to see how things play out before they make a move.
It's like a giant chess game, isn't it?
It is.
Everyone trying to figure out what the next move is, what it's going to mean for them.
And while everyone's focused on this one potential meeting, there are all these other things going on that could change the whole game.
That's a good point.
And that's why it's important to not oversimplify things. This isn't just about two powerful leaders deciding the fate of a nation. This is about the Ukrainian people, their resilience, their determination to figure things out for themselves.
I mean, their voices need to be heard in all this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential players, the risks, the ethical dilemmas.
We have.
Is there anything else we need to consider? Any other angles we haven't explored yet?
I think it's important to remember that even if this meeting happens, and even if they manage to reach some kind of agreement, well, the whole process of achieving peace is going to be a long and complicated road.
Oh, I bet.
It's not just a one-time thing.
They don't just shake hands, sign a paper, and everything magically goes back to normal.
It's not that simple.
Right.
It's a continuous process, one that needs constant effort, dialogue, and a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances.
So what would that even look like? I mean, what kind of effort are we talking about?
Well, you've got to rebuild trust. You've got to address all the underlying issues that led to the conflict in the first place.
Yeah, all the stuff that caused this to happen.
Exactly. And then you got to deal with the trauma.
Oh, yeah.
And the economic fallout. It's all part of the process.
It's easy to focus on the drama of a meeting, but the real work comes after. Right.
Exactly.
And what about all those international organizations, like the UN? Do they have a part to play in this?
They do.
I mean, can they help mediate the conflict? Can they make sure any agreement is actually implemented and upheld?
They could, yeah. It's just there are so many moving parts.
There are.
So many different perspectives.
Yeah, it's almost overwhelming.
It is a complex situation, no doubt about it.
It is.
But that's why we do these deep dives, right? To try and break it all down, look at it from every angle, and hopefully give you the information you need to understand this crazy world a little bit better.
You said it. I have to admit, when we started talking about this potential meeting, I was kind of excited about it. Now I'm not so sure.
Really? What changed?
Well, it seems like every time we uncover one layer, there's another one underneath, even more complicated.
That's how it usually goes with these global events.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we should just give up on trying to understand them.
Right.
Actually, it makes it even more important to stay informed, to talk about these things, and to demand better from our leaders.
Okay, I can do that. Stay informed.
That's the spirit.
It's been quite the deep dive, hasn't it?
It has.
We started with news of meeting, and now, wow, we're talking about global energy markets, the UN, the human cost of war.
A lot to take in.
Yeah, a lot. So where do we even go from here? What should we be paying attention to as this whole thing plays out?
Well, I'd say keep your eye on the diplomacy, all that stuff happening behind the scenes.
Right.
Will Trump actually call Putin?
Yeah. Will they even agree to meet?
And if they do, where will it be?
Switzerland? Serbia? Somewhere else entirely?
Exactly.
It's amazing how the location could have such a big impact.
It really could.
And then, of course, there are the concessions.
Ah, yeah.
Will Ukraine feel pressured to give up territory just to get peace?
That's a tough one.
Will Russia back down from what they want?
We'll have to see.
What about China? What will they do?
Well, they could use their influence to help find a solution.
Right.
Or they could just sit back and watch everything unfold.
I guess their next move will tell us a lot.
It will.
It really is like a high-stakes poker game, isn't it?
It is a very high-stakes game.
And it's not just a game for the people making the decisions, is it?
No, not at all.
Their decisions will have a real impact on the people in Ukraine
They will.
and the region
Yeah.
and the whole world.
That's right.
So what can we do, as individuals?
Well, we can stay informed just like you're doing now.
Yeah.
The more we understand, the better we'll be able to talk about these issues and hold our leaders accountable.
So no burying our heads in the sand.
Absolutely not.
Got it. Stay informed.
Stay curious, ask questions, and don't be afraid to challenge the narratives.
Okay, I can do that.
Good.
This story's not over yet, is it?
I have a feeling it's just getting started.
I think you're right. Any final thoughts?
Just this. Never underestimate diplomacy.
Okay,
Even when things seem impossible, there's always hope.
I like that.
Never give up hope.
A little cautious optimism.
Exactly.
Well, that's our deep dive on this potential meeting between Trump and Putin.
It's been a good one.
It has. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more to talk about as this develops. So stay tuned. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll catch you next time.